Welcome to Property Question Time. I am your host, Heather Kingston. I'm a realtor with the Kate's Group here in Weatherford, Texas. And I have a panel of experts here that's very excited to answer all of your questions today, and I look forward to hearing from each one of them. So here we have Kate Hogan. She is with Keller Williams Heritage West. Cody Houston, he is an insurance agent with Trophy Insurance. We also have Sabrina Sparkman. She is an associate broker with Coldwell Banker Realty. Welcome, everybody. I'm excited to have this conversation
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Well, let's dig right into it. Sabrina, we're going to start with you.
Okay.
Our first question is about lakeside properties. What are the restrictions with regards to using the water? Your property's right next to a lake, so can you just funnel as much water up onto your property as you want to? Do you have to get permission from anybody? How does all that work?
Well, Possum Kingdom Lake is primarily where I work and live, and it is known as a destination lake. And there are other lakes in this area, but I'm going to talk mainly about Possum Kingdom Lake. And even though it is a destination lake where people live and vacation, it is governed by the Brazos River Authority. And it is a lake that channels a lot of water down south all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. And water comes in from New Mexico and Lubbock. So that water is governed by, again, the Brazos River Authority, and most of the information that you have questions about can be found on their website, brazos.org. But their office is also located near beautiful Morris Shepherd Dam, right there at the lake, and you can stop in and visit with them. But just because you live on the lake is huge. For example, from where I live to the end of the lake by Morris Shepherd Dam, it's about 26 miles long. So there's a bunch of diverse developments in areas of the lake, and the BRA governs who can take water from the lake and who can't. And if you want to take water from the lake as resident or commercial, you have to get a water permit, and it has to be approved by the Brazos River Authority. For example, Sportsman's World, you cannot take water from the lake at all if you live in that development. But if there's certain developments on the north side of the lake where PK Water Supply does not offer water, there's no water system, then you apply for that permit from Brazos River Authority, and they will govern that. So it's complicated as to where you live and whether you can do it and how much water you can take out, etc. And I know that people sometimes want to do water sports and have water sports businesses there, but that is also governed by the Brazos River Authority as to what cannot be offered there. At Possum Kingdom Lake, for example, there's no parasailing, there's no professional wakeboarding lessons, there's no food preparations on the water. So they're all about protecting the water. That's first and foremost their job, to protect the water, because they supply to so many cities and businesses, all the way down to, like I said, the Gulf of Mexico.
Do you have to have special septic systems if you have a property directly on the water, and does that have to go through the River Authority as well?
Yeah, that's a good question, because there really is no zoning or planning committee out at Possum Kingdom Lake and in the Grayford area. But the one thing that is governed is a septic system and water, how close it is. So that is, when you build a home or you build a commercial property, you have to get that septic system approved by the BRA, and they will tell you whether it has to be an aerobic or anaerobic system, or how many septic tanks you have to have. So yes, that's very important, and again, it's all about protecting the water.
All right, because you don't want any of that septic leaching.
That's right.
Into the water.
Yes.
Yep, exactly. Okay, cool. Cody, what are the basic qualifications for a house to be insurable when you purchase it? I've had a lot of clients move in, and usually our number one priority is the roof.
True.
So that's usually a huge deal breaker for a lot of our clients. So what do you look at as far as insurability of a house? What are the main, big points there?
Well, actually, it goes back even further to the home itself. When somebody comes in our office or wants us to quote their property, first and foremost, we have to make sure that that person does have an insurable interest in the property. The way we verify that is obviously just the quickest way is go to each county has their own appraisal district, making sure that person is actually on the deed. That's first and foremost. And then we can go to step two, and then you start looking at the characteristics of the home. Obviously the roof is a determining factor whether or not a carrier is going to accept that risk or not. Many carriers, of course, my agency here at Trophy Insurance, we're an independent agency, so we have multiple carriers that we deal with, and each carrier, their underwriting guidelines are different. Their appetites are different from what they want and what they'll accept. So you just kind of have to know those questions to ask to see if that property will actually fit into one of those carriers' appetites. But roof is a big determining factor. When we do a quote on a home, the property is linked up to what we call the clue system. That's going to give you a loss report on the property. And if there's been a claim that comes up within the past 5 years, first and foremost, we want to make sure that the person or whoever is buying the home or wants us to insure it can provide proof that that roof was actually replaced.
Right.
Otherwise, the carrier is not going to accept the risk because, they want to make sure the roof has been replaced and it's in good condition.
What if there's an open claim that they didn't even realize was open? And they run that report and they're like, hey, there was a water loss or a water claim on this property, and it was never closed. We wouldn't be able to
Typically,
close
we're not
on
going to
that.
insure that. We're going to advise the client, the prospect at that point, to wait until the claim is actually closed out, because just too much risk later on that could get, cross-contaminated or whatever. So yes, we want to make sure all claims are closed, because that's a question that they're going to ask the underwriters with each carrier. They don't want to accept another claim that's open. So yes, did that answer your question?
Yeah, okay. Absolutely. Because I think that's the scariest thing for us is because we can't determine and we can't tell our clients, that, oh, no, don't worry about this roof. It'll be fine. Just, do it on your next hailstorm. But it's a scary thing for agents. So we push them to you. You answer the questions. Call the insurance guy.
And it's very important that we inspect the homes personally as an agent.
When do you do that? At what point? Before closing or after closing?
Well, it depends on if they're buying a new home or it's something they're reinsuring.
Sure. As
an agent, I've got an agreement with the insurance carrier to make sure the property is in insurable condition. So yes, we can go out on a Google Earth and Google Map or whatever and get pictures, or on the go to the internet, Zillow, Realtor.com, but sometimes those pictures aren't up to date.
Right.
So we need to go out and inspect the home, take pictures front and back. If there's any damages that we see to the home, any open electrical hazards, trees hanging over the roof, those type of things are very obvious, and those are things that we're going to
send that
question.
dreaded letter.
Right.
You better remove those branches or we're cutting you. We've gotten those before. Yep. All right. Well, thanks. I appreciate that.
Yes,
Kate, is it possible to gauge the value of ranch land based on the county that it's in? What exactly? How do you comp those out? If you have a client looking for 25 acres, what's the best way to comp those out? Or if you're looking to list those?
Yeah, so how much time do we have?
Right.
I think we can all agree there's no cut and dry formula to that. And there's so many things that have to be taken into consideration. Yes, you can start, you like to start really, really small and get as close, comparisons as you can, and then get a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger, because that's essentially what an appraiser is going to do, right? So they're going to want to see what's either touching that property or within the same neighborhood, et cetera. So there's a lot of things, even going back to you as far as water. Water is a big thing. So is water available? There's a lot of things that going into, are there mineral rights? Are there any old oil and gas situations or pipelines or anything like that? Improvements come into play. So my answer is not a yes or no or this or that. Improvements include fencing, outbuildings, crops, that kind of stuff. So there's a lot that goes into it. And it's subjective. It's one human's idea of what it's worth. And so we, essentially start from likable, comparable properties that are similar, that you can say that one's like this, that one's like that. So, and then we do a range of acreage, essentially, a little bit lower, a little bit higher, and go from there. So it really does make a difference as far as what county. you're in, and then going off of just basic price per acre as well, and then what factors play into that. So it's not just a yes or a no or this or that in that aspect. So
Sometimes you have to back into the value, right?
Absolutely.
Separate the house and the improvements and then the acreage a little bit separately. Sometimes that's an easier approach.
Well, location too. I mean,
Yeah.
is the location, you also have to be aware of what's going on around it. You know, how many times have we sold a piece of property and then there's a dozer coming in behind it and you're like, oh man, that's a game changer.
Oh,
and
look,
so it's just
brand new neighborhood going in right behind it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's being, not that our crystal ball can tell us everything, but there is a lot of information that you can collect too as far as what's future happenings. You know, what companies are coming into the area and that kind of stuff too.
New roads, yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, perfect. Okay. All right. Next, the open debate question. What restrictions are in place in respect to the distance between a carport or a parking place and the street? I'm assuming we're talking about in-city properties. All right. Do you know of any? Who wants to take this one first?
Yeah.
Well, it really just depends upon the zoning and planning committees in that city, if there is one, because they will have certain restrictions within that city. And then also an HOA, a homeowners association, may have their own restrictions within that city's restrictions. If there is no permitting department or zoning department like there isn't in Grayford around Possum Kingdom Lake, then the only thing you may be able to fall back on is that HOA or POA, and I might mention a POA several times because that's a property owner association, which we have out there. So you just need to check and see whether there are any restrictions within the city and then within your HOA or POA, and if there aren't, then I guess the only thing I'd consider is maybe utilities.
How about surveys?
Well, that's what I was going to say. As far as the survey, there's certain setbacks,
Right.
you know, as far as, and there's build lines too. So just because your property line is out here
Right.
doesn't mean that you can literally go to the state corner. So that's definitely something to consider too, is where are you able to build? And,
And sometimes the corner lot is completely different than an interior lot.
Yeah.
They're going to have different setbacks. So
Absolutely.
survey, I would say, is the most important thing.
Very important. Yeah.
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 Thank you, guys. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after the break to answer more of your property-related questions.
Whether you're looking for a lakeside or hillside home, or a piece of property that is ready to build on, Possum Kingdom Lake is the place to be. As one of the most beautiful and tranquil areas in North Texas, Possum Kingdom Lake offers far more than just space and scenery. It promises a way of life that many just dream of. I'm Sabrina Sparkman, and I have lived at Possum Kingdom Lake since 2013, so I know how rewarding life here can be. I look forward to seeing you here.
Hi, I'm Heather Kingston. Showing land on these ranches that we have out here in Parker County is one of my most favorite things to do. Come on, let's go take a ride.
When choosing a buyer's agent, you have to have someone who has geographical competence and a vast knowledge of the area that you were choosing to purchase in. As a listing agent, my focus is to net the most from my sellers with the least amount of risk. That's such an important part of my job. And with a background of photography and videography, I bring everything to the table that we need to market your property to the best of our abilities.
The key to protecting your hard-earned assets is receiving the correct advice. Here at Trophy Insurance Solutions, we provide you with the education along with options so that you can make the right decision. We will tell you what you do need, not what you don't need. Many of Trophy's clients get to know us as friends because we put the client's interests first. We pride ourselves as being considerate, honorable, and accountable, but also competitive because it is what our clients deserves. I would like to earn your business and your trust. Please give me a call at 940-445-7923. I look forward to meeting you.
Hi, I'm Kate Hogan with Keller Williams Heritage West. Whether you're looking for residential, land, or luxury properties, I would love to guide you on your journey to finding the ideal property for you. I like to think I make the American dream possible. So call, text, or visit my website and let's start your journey today for finding your American dream property.
Welcome back to Property Question Time. I am Heather Kingston, and joining me today is Kate Hogan, Cody Houston, and Sabrina Sparkman. Welcome back, guys. We'll get right back into the questions if you don't mind. Cody, this question's for you. We're talking about new builds. Explain the insurance process behind a new build. Who has to pay for insurance? Who's responsible for insurance? Is there any requirements, liability? I mean, you're not going to have homeowners because it's not completed. So what does that look like, and how often do you even deal with that?
Right. So obviously, you kind of get a determination when the construction phase is going to start. There's actually a couple of options. The homeowner actually could purchase what we refer to as a builder's risk policy, or the actual builder or general contractor could purchase that builder's risk policy to protect that investment during the course of construction. Most of the time, the carriers they want the coverage to start at the beginning of the construction phase, which is as soon as anything's done to the property as far as the construction of it. That could be most of the time it's the slab. That's when, and sometimes they do start prior to that. If you drop lumber prior to the pouring of the slab, then that's when you want to make sure the policy is in effect, because obviously you want to protect anything that's out there in the open that could get damaged, or theft, or any type of loss to that material. So yeah, so the homeowner could actually purchase the builder's risk, or the builder could.
Would it be on the homeowner's shoulders if they're the ones that hold the construction loan rather than the builder?
Well, I mean, again, it could go either way. I mean, sometimes the lenders actually require one or the other to that policy to be in their name. So really, it's up. There's a couple of options there. I see it both ways a lot. Most of the time, I do see the builder taking out the builder's risk. It's in the builder. The builder is the named insured on the builder's risk policy. There's still risk there too. I just, ran into a situation not too long ago. A builder, something happened between the relationship between the homeowner and the builder took all the materials and basically left the site, no longer to be seen. So, therefore, there's a question whether or not that's going to be covered or not. So, but yeah, it's kind of hard for me to say which is the best way to do it. But yeah, I see them both ways. But most of the time, it's the builder taking the builder's risk out.
Okay, so there are options, and again, just call the insurance agent and get it figured out what the best thing to do is.
Yeah.
That's right. All right, Kate, let's go to you next. If a farmer wants to farm organically, and the activity of the neighboring farm is adversely affecting the produce, what powers exist to give that farmer the right to farm according to his requirements for organic farming, if any?
Yeah, so I mean, adding the if any is a great, addition to that. As far as the power of it, I mean, there's so many things that could go into that as far as what, depending what the neighbor does. But I think that all comes to your initial research as far as your intentions of what you want to use that property for. I've had some clients that moved down here from Wyoming, and they lived off the land. So they had their own cows, their own dairy cows, they had their own goats, they made their own shampoo, soaps, all of that. And so we would go look at some properties that were, way too many animals on the property and just not very well kept as far as stuff that was going into the soil and everything like that. And so they actually did soil tests to kind of see what was down underneath, because we don't see any of that. And so that was one of the resources available to them. And there were several properties that we found that just the neighboring properties really weren't supportive of, depending on how many animals they had or vehicles parked or whatever they were using their own property for. So I would say it really goes back to what is your intention, and really making sure that we can do all the due diligence beforehand if this is someone coming in to purchase the property, because really the course of action that you have afterwards isn't really unless they're against violation. I have a property right now that's a beautiful 5-acre parcel that overlooks a junkyard. And so what we're doing right now is going back to the property valuation, is that property in violation of the restrictions that are out there? Because essentially that property is devaluing our beautiful 5-acre property. And so that's something to look into, and we're finding out that there's no restrictions towards that. And so that's bringing the value down. So that is one thing that can affect it. But going organically, I would just say a lot of times making sure what your intention is, that you're doing your due diligence beforehand, because you may not have the right to lawfully enforce something, once you're the owner.
Right.
So.
Litigation is not, it's
No.
not always the best route, and it
No.
doesn't really solve, people's issues. So, okay.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Thank you. Perfect. Sabrina, a lot of people are deciding to go off grid nowadays. I would love to.
Yeah, let's go.
They want to, be self-sufficient. So how practical is it? How cost effective can you do it? I mean, it seems a little bit overwhelming. Where should people start? Which route do you recommend?
Well, that's a good question. And kind of like Kate was saying, you need to do your due diligence on a piece of property that you're going to buy to see what you can or can't do. So we have a piece of property that we tried to develop living off-grid as much as possible, or if need be. But again, we have property in a POA. And so there are restrictions within that property owner association. For example, we have a wind generator, but we are not able to put that up higher than 35 feet according to our restrictions. But we had to do our due diligence to find out, would you benefit from having a wind generator? Because if you go to the national weather maps, you find out if you have enough wind over 75 miles an hour, over 75% of the time, at least 5 to 10 miles an hour. And a lot of places don't have that, and it wouldn't be worth your while to have a wind generator. And then are there limitations on the height? And then we have solar panels, but will your development allow it? Or if you have a piece of property that's not in a POA, then it could. But there's dual trackers which follow the sun all the time, and then there's solar panels that are just stationary and capture sun part of the time. So you have to look at the efficiency of the solar panels and figure out how many you need to sustain the size of your house and the size of your property. And then there's water harvesting a lot of people consider. And thankfully, Texas does allow water harvesting, but a lot of states like California doesn't allow it, and Colorado has limitations on how much you can water harvest. And so if you're going to water harvest, of course you want a metal roof or a clay roof. You don't want a composition roof. That's a factor when you're building a piece of property. And then the containers that they're collected in, how will you filter that water? There are companies out here that do set up water filtration systems so it is drinkable. And then there's also water you can capture off of the building if you do have farm animals. So you just have to think about all of that. Do you want all of those? Do you want some of those? Will the land sustain it? Is it a bunch of rock? How much wind do you have? When you don't have rain, you still don't get water, even though you have a water harvesting system. So it's very popular, but it does take research and money and time, but it is doable. And we've learned a lot over the past 10 or so years of doing that. So if people have any questions about it, feel free to reach out.
That's great. There's so many different options. I was happy to hear you talk about wind and not just solar, because there's so much that goes into solar, good and bad.
Right.
And I've seen a lot of bad on the solar side. So
A lot of misconceptions on that as well, the solar too.
Yeah.
So
what about a whole house generator for times of emergency if it's really cloudy? Is that something that you would add on as well?
Well, we have one of those too.
So yes, you would.
Yeah, but ours is based upon propane. So if you run out of propane, then you run out of that generator, and you have to say what generates energy for the generator. But that after that Arctic vortex happened, a lot of people started getting generators, backup generators for their house, and that just exploded. But you just have to understand what size generator you can afford, or can you put it on your property, and then how are you going to power that? Ours is propane based.
Right.
Yes.
All right. So a huge propane tank just in case.
Yes.
More than
absolutely.
250 gallons is minimum, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
Minimum.
Yes.
Right. Okay. All right. Let's get to the debate question. What are the most common issues faced in relation to restrictions on remodeling? So think about, your regular home in the town. Think about any historic style homes, and then maybe just homes out in the county. The differences between the three.
So I had the really cool opportunity of owning a house. It wasn't deemed historical. It could have been. It was built in 1910. And so living kind of in the historical street of Weatherford, it was off the square. Thankfully, my house was totally redone. However, there's certain houses that are a part of the historical society that, and this was just a personal experience, that you can't just come in and tear stuff down and redo stuff. You really have to maintain, similar surfaces and qualities of the house to be historical. And so that was something really cool that I got to learn. And then just going into different, when I moved here from Colorado, permits were a thing. So I learned that there's certain things that you have to go through the city, even to trim your trees.
They didn't have that in Colorado?
I guess I never had to deal with it because we never, remodeled extensively in that aspect. So I think the historical part is really cool, and they hold very sacred here in Weatherford. But your intake on what you found?
Well, I found it interesting that in the city, like Watauga, just to even get a fence put up, you had to have a permit by the city, and it was complicated. Where I live, you don't have to have that done, although make sure it meets the POA specifications for our Property Owners Association. So when you remodel, again, you have to take into consideration who has the rules of what you want to do. And when you do remodel, a lot of times there is a permit, especially if it involves a plumber or electrician or a roofer, and then the counties are going to add on the tax value. If you do remodel in a way that they can see, they're going to add value to your taxes. So you just need to take that in consideration. And what kind of remodeling is best? Of course, that's always, probably Kate would agree, or the kitchen, the master bathroom, flooring.
Where you get the biggest return on.
Kitchen, master bathrooms and flooring seem to be the most popular, but fencing, of course, is always good too.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had an interesting circumstance with a client who bought in an HOA in Aledo. They were brand new in this neighborhood. They switched out their roof because they had hail damage. They got a letter from their HOA that says, "You didn't approve this through us. You need to remove your roof."
Literally remove.
That's what they said, right? They got around it, after talking to the HOA, but it's an interesting thing that I had never thought to tell my clients, like, hey, if you live in an HOA, even something as simple as changing your roof could be considered a remodel. So be careful. Read everything.
Absolutely.
With the color or the style.
It has to be approved by the HOA.
It does.
Any exterior change. So that's an interesting thought that I hadn't thought of prior to that. So thank you guys. Sadly, that's all the time we have for today. If you could please send in your questions, keep them coming. Send them to our website, PAX180.com. That's PAX180.com. Or you can send them in via email, pqt@paxtelevision.com. Thanks again for my panel of experts for coming in, Kate Hogan, Cody Houston, and Sabrina Sparkman. And thank you guys for watching Property Question Time with me, Heather Kingston. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.